The morning sun rose over Harmony's edge like it always did, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold that reminded the colonists of home, though none of them had seen Earth in years, maybe decades for some. Commander Jinseo Park stood on the observation deck of the colony's central hub, watching children run toward the primary school complex with their backpacks bouncing against their backs. New Sol Colony was 3 years old now, a thriving community of 3,000 souls who had traveled across the stars to build something beautiful. The colony specialized in agricultural research and education. The soil here was rich and the climate perfect for growing crops that could feed humanity's expanding presence among the stars. Jinseo smiled as he watched Dr. Minjun Choi, the colony administrator, greet families arriving at the research center. The man never seemed to stop working, always ensuring every colonist had what they needed. "Commander Park, we have an incoming transmission," called out Communications Officer Hae-won Song from her station. "Multiple vessels approaching from the outer system, unknown configuration." Jinseo's smile faded as he turned toward the tactical display. 5 large ships, their designs unfamiliar and somewhat menacing with their angular hulls and weapon, arrays that seemed excessive for peaceful exploration. He had heard rumors of a species called the Krillians expanding aggressively through this sector, but humanity had never made formal contact with them. "Open a channel," Jinseo ordered, keeping his voice calm and professional. "This is Commander Jinseo Park of New Sol Colony. Representing the United Human Collective, we welcome you to Harmony's Edge and offer our friendship." The response came quickly, too quickly, as if they had been waiting for contact. The screen filled with the image of an insectoid creature, its multiple eyes gleaming with something that looked disturbingly like contempt. Its mandibles clicked together as it spoke through the translation system. "I am Commander Zixthrax of the Krillian Dominion," the creature announced. "This world contains mineral deposits of significant value to our empire. You will evacuate immediately and surrender all claims to this system." Ambassador Hae-won Song stepped forward, her diplomatic training taking over. She was young for an ambassador, barely 30, but she believed deeply in humanity's mission of peaceful coexistence. "Commander Zixthrax, we would be happy to discuss resource sharing and mutual benefit. Our colony's presence here need not conflict with your interests. Perhaps we could arrange a meeting to—" "You misunderstand," Zixthrax interrupted, his mandibles spreading in what might have been a smile. "This is not a negotiation, this is notification. You have 6 hours to begin evacuation, or we will demonstrate the consequences of defying the Dominion." The transmission ended abruptly. Jinseo immediately activated the colony-wide emergency channel. "This is Commander Park. All residents please remain calm. We have a developing situation that requires caution, parents. Please keep your children close." But Hae-won was already working, her fingers flying across her console. "I'm contacting the Galactic Council. We have rights under the Frontier Settlement Accords. They can't if they think we're weak," Jinseo said grimly. "Get me fleet command, we need support out here now." The next 3 hours passed in tense preparation. The colony had minimal defenses, just enough to deter pirates and handle minor threats. Against 5 Krillian warships, they were hopelessly outmatched. But evacuation was impossible. They had only 2 small transport ships, barely enough for 200 people, and nowhere near enough time. Hae-won worked tirelessly, broadcasting their situation to every frequency, pleading with the Galactic Council to intervene. The responses were sympathetic but useless. The Council promised to investigate the matter and call for peaceful dialogue. Empty words that meant nothing while Krillian guns pointed at human children. Teacher Soo-min Lee was reading to her class of 31st graders when the alarms began to sound. She had been with the colony since the beginning, had helped design the school curriculum, had watched these children grow. "It's okay, everyone," she said with a smile she didn't feel. This is just a drill. Let's practice our emergency procedures. The first blast hit the eastern wing of the school complex. The explosion was massive, far beyond anything a warning shot should be. The entire eastern section vanished in a ball of fire and debris. Su Min threw herself over the nearest children as the shockwave hit, as windows shattered and walls cracked. Her ears rang and her vision blurred, but she could hear screaming, so much screaming. "Get to the shelters," she shouted, hauling children to their feet. "Run! Run now!" More blasts rained down from orbit. The Krillians weren't firing warning shots. They were targeting population centers deliberately. The primary school, the residential districts, the medical center where families gathered, they were being systematically destroyed. Captain Jae Hyun Kang's patrol ship, Indomitable, dropped out of faster-than-light travel 30 minutes too late. He had received Ha-1's distress signal and pushed his engines to their absolute limits, but space was vast and cruel. The moment his sensors showed him New Sol Colony, his blood turned to ice. Half the settlement was gone, just gone, reduced to smoking craters and scattered ruins. The Krillian ships were already departing, broadcasting their achievement across all frequencies like it was something to celebrate. Let this serve as warning to lesser species who question Dominion authority. Zixthrax's voice declared. Those who resist will share this fate. Jae brought his ship down into the devastation, his crew scrambling to search for survivors. They found hundreds in the emergency shelters, people who had reached safety in time. But the casualties, the casualties. 600 children dead. 400 adults. The school had been hit first and hit hardest. They found Su Min Lee in the rubble, both legs crushed but still alive, still trying to protect the 3 children she had shielded with her own body. 2 of them had survived. Dr. Min Jun Choi was found at his desk in the administrative center, killed instantly when the ceiling collapsed. Commander Jin Seo Park had died trying to operate the colony's pathetic defensive systems. Ambassador Haewon Song was alive, but broken, physically and mentally. Clutching a recording device that contained every attempt at negotiation, every unanswered plea to the Galactic Council, every moment of the massacre. Jae Hyun stood in what had been the primary school playground, looking at the small crater where the swings used to be. His hands shook as he recorded the scene, knowing this footage would travel back to Earth, to Fleet Command, to every human world. At Fleet Command headquarters, above Earth, Admiral Young-Ho Kim received the transmission in his office. He was a veteran of the Unification Wars 2 centuries ago, had thought he had seen the worst of what sentient beings could do to each other. He was wrong. The footage played across his screens, the smoking ruins. The covered bodies lined up in rows, so many small bodies. The survivors' 1,000-yard stares. Su Min Lee being carried to the medical ship with tears streaming down her face as she mumbled names of students she couldn't save. Young-Ho's hands trembled as he paused the video on an image of a child's backpack, bright blue with cartoon stars, lying torn and bloody in the debris. His own grandchildren had backpacks like that. His throat closed and his vision blurred, but he forced himself to watch everything, to bear witness to every horror. When the footage ended, he sat in silence for a full minute. Then he reached for his communications panel with hands that no longer shook. They were steady now, steady with purpose. "Get me the Security Council," he said, his voice cold and hard as steel. "All of them. Every member, wake them up if you have to." He stood and walked to his window, looking down at Earth below, at the home humanity had almost destroyed before learning to unite, before choosing peace. They had chosen peace. They had chosen diplomacy. They had chosen to be better. And the galaxy had seen that as weakness. "No more," Young-Ho whispered to his reflection. "They killed our children. This will not stand." The emergency session of the Human Security Council convened 6 hours after the massacre footage reached Earth. Director Yunji Wang stood at the head of the table, surrounded by holographic projections of council members from every major human world: Mars, Europa Station, the Centauri colonies, all of them with faces showing the same shock and fury. "The footage has been verified," Anji said, her voice tight with controlled emotion. 1,043 confirmed dead, 612 were children under the age of 15. The Krillian Dominion has committed an unprovoked massacre against human civilians. The room erupted in angry voices. Councillor Han from Mars was shouting about immediate military response. Councillor Zhang from Europa wanted to know why their intelligence had failed to predict this. Through it all, President Ji Woo-nam sat quietly, watching the footage play again on her private screen. She had watched it 17 times now, and each viewing made her more certain of what had to be done. "Colleagues, please." Yoonji called for order. "We need to discuss our response carefully. Humanity has been at peace for 200 years. We have deliberately maintained a small military force focused on patrol and rescue. We are not equipped for. Then we get equipped." Admiral Young-ho Kim interrupted, standing from his seat. "Madam President, Director, fellow council members, I have served humanity for 60 years. I remember the Unification Wars. When we nearly destroyed ourselves, we chose peace after that. Chose to put our resources into exploration and science rather than weapons. I supported that choice, and I still do." He paused, his jaw clenched tight. But peace is not the same as pacifism. We maintain defensive capabilities, maintain research into advanced systems, maintain them precisely for a situation like this. The Krillians think we're soft, think we're weak, think they can murder our children and will just accept it. We need to show them what humanity really is. President Nam finally spoke, her voice quiet but carrying absolute authority. "Admiral Kim, what are our realistic capabilities?" Young-ho activated a holographic display showing humanity's military assets. Currently operational, 350 combat-capable vessels, ranging from frigates to heavy cruisers and other. 500 ships in reserves that could be reactivated within 2 weeks. Total fleet potential of 800 to 1,000 vessels within a month. Gasps rippled through the council. Most members had no idea humanity maintained such numbers, even in reserve. "Our weapons research division," Young-ho continued, gesturing to another display, "has been developing advanced systems for 2 decades under Dr. Hyun Woo. SEO classified projects that were kept as contingency, measures targeting systems that outclass anything currently deployed in known space. Adaptive shielding, coordinated fleet combat networks. We kept these classified to avoid an arms race. But they exist, and they work." "How do you know they work?" Councillor Han demanded. "Because we test them," Young-ho replied simply. "Every system, every year. In exercises the Galactic Council doesn't know about humanity learned 200 years ago that hoping for peace while preparing for war is the only way to survive. We've been preparing. We just never thought we'd need it." Dr. Han Woo Sao appeared via hologram from the weapons research facility on Luna. She was a small woman in her 50s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Council members, I can have priority systems deployed to active vessels within 48 hours, full integration across the fleet within 10 days. If you give me authorization and unlimited resources, I can make our fleet the most effective fighting force in this sector." President Nam looked around the table at faces that showed anger, grief, determination. "And what about the Galactic Council? What about our diplomatic standing?" Ambassador Taeyang Shin, humanity's representative to the Galactic Council, appeared looking exhausted and furious. "Madam President, I have spent the last 4 hours pleading with the Council to condemn the Krillian attack. Do you know what they said? They expressed sympathy. They called for restraint on all sides. They suggested we pursue diplomatic channels. His voice rose in bitter anger. The Valorian Republic's ambassador actually told me privately that we should accept reality. He said the Krillians are too powerful, that we should mourn our dead and move on, because that's what survivors do. Most council members believe the same thing, even if they won't say it publicly. Then the council is useless, President Nam said flatly. If they won't defend innocent children from massacre, then they serve no purpose that matters. Admiral Kim. Begin full military mobilization, Dr. Asio. You have your unlimited resources, Director Wang. Coordinate with all human worlds to maximize our industrial output. We're going to war. The word hung in the air like thunder. War. After 2 centuries of peace, humanity was going to war. Not conquest, Nam clarified, looking at each council member in turn. Not expansion, not revenge beyond what justice demands. We will destroy the Krillian military capability. We will bring the responsible commanders to justice. And we will make it clear to every species in this galaxy that humanity's children are not targets. Is that understood? Every council member voted yes, unanimous approval in minutes. Across human space, the mobilization began. On Mars, factory complexes that had been producing agricultural equipment retooled to manufacture weapon systems. The shipyards above Europa that had been building colony transports switched to military production. The Centauri colonies, home to humanity's most advanced research institutions, put every scientist to work on combat applications. Reserve personnel reported to duty stations by the millions men and women who had trained for combat but never expected to see it were now preparing to fight. Fleet Admiral Dai Young Choi, who had retired 5 years ago after a distinguished career, returned to service and was given supreme command of all military operations. Dai Young was 73 years old, gray-haired and stern-faced, with a reputation for tactical brilliance and absolute dedication to minimizing casualties. He stood in the fleet assembly point at the edge of human space, watching ships arrive 1 by 1, 2 by 2, in groups of 10. 300 operational vessels now, reported his aide, Intelligence Officer Min Seo Kwan. Reserves arriving. Hourly current projection shows 500 combat-ready ships within 1 week, 800 within 2 weeks. And the Krillians? De Young asked. Min Seo pulled up intelligence reports. Their main military force is estimated at 3,000 vessels, but spread across their entire empire. Regional forces respond to local threats independently. The force that hit New Seoul was a single battle group of 5 ships. They consider it a minor operation. They murdered 1,000 of our people and call it minor, De Young said quietly. What else do we know about their military? Standard tactics favor overwhelming firepower and numerical superiority, Min Seo explained. They rarely coordinate beyond basic formation. Flying individual captains compete for glory, which creates communication gaps we can exploit. Their technology is solid but not innovative. Hasn't evolved significantly in 50 years. They rely on intimidation and brute force. The De Young studied the data thoughtfully. They've never faced an opponent who could match them technologically and exceed them tactically. They expect us to either surrender or die quickly. What they're about to get is a very different war. Meanwhile, Commander Zixthrax was receiving reports of human mobilization with amusement. He stood in his flagship's command center, surrounded by subordinates who shared his contempt for the lesser species. The humans are gathering their ships, one officer reported. Intelligence suggests they may attempt military action. Zixthrax's mandibles spread in what passed for a laugh among his kind. Let them come. We will crush them as easily as we crushed their pathetic colony, perhaps. This time they will learn their place in the galactic hierarchy. Inform Dominion Command that I am advancing our expansion schedule. We will claim 3 more human colonies to reinforce the lesson. His officers cheered, already imagining the glory and advancement that would come from such easy victories. They had no idea what was coming. At the human fleet assembly point, Admiral Dae-Young Choi watched the count rise. 400 ships, 450, 500. Every vessel was being fitted with Dr. ECO's advanced systems, their crews training intensively on the new combat networks. Captain Sora Jang of the heavy cruiser Vengeance ran simulations with her crew, practicing the coordinated targeting that would allow 10 human ships to fight like a single organism. Captain Woo Jin Park of the battleship Retribution drilled his weapons teams until they could fire with precision that bordered on perfection. The whole fleet trained as one, united by grief and purpose. President Nam's address to humanity broadcast across every world, every station, every ship. Her face was calm, but her eyes blazed with determination. "They slaughtered our children," she said simply. "They did this to show us we were weak, to prove we would accept any horror rather than fight. They were wrong. We are humanity. We survived ice ages and plagues, wars and disasters. We reached for the stars when every rational voice said it was impossible. We will show the Krillian Dominion what humanity really is. We will show the whole galaxy this ends when justice is done." 500 human warships set course for Krillian space. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson it would never. The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Zarian Prime system. 500 warships moving in perfect formation. Admiral Dae-Young Choi stood on the bridge of his flagship Eternal Justice, watching the tactical displays show the Krillian military outpost ahead 30 defensive platforms, 40 warships, and somewhere in that fortress was Commander Zix Thrax. "All ships report ready status," announced Communications Officer Park Sung-min. "Fleet combat network is active and synchronized. Targeting systems are locked, shields at maximum. We are ready, Admiral." Dae-Young took a deep breath. This would be humanity's first major military action in 2 centuries. Everything they had built, everything they had prepared, would be tested in the next few hours. "Open a channel to the Krillian base. Let's give them one chance." The Krillian commander at Zarian Prime appeared on screen, his mandibles clicking in what might have been surprise. "Human vessels, you are in Dominion space without authorization. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. I am Fleet Admiral Dae-Young Choi of the United Human Collective," Dae-Young replied, his voice cold and formal. "We are here to take into custody Commander Zix Thrax and all personnel responsible for the massacre at New Seoul Colony. Surrender them peacefully, and your base will not be harmed. Resist, and we will take them by force. You have 10 minutes to decide." The Krillian commander's surprise turned to what looked like amusement. "You come here with your primitive vessels and demand we surrender our heroes, the ones who taught your species humility. This is the funniest thing I've heard in years. I will enjoy watching you die." The channel closed. Dae-Young had expected this response, but had needed to make the offer anyway. Humanity would fight with fury, but also with honor. "All ships, battle stations, execute attack plan Delta, target only military installations and vessels, if they have civilians on those platforms. Avoid casualties where possible. Let's show them what real warriors look like." The Krillian base commander, Vix Krath, watched his sensors with growing confidence as the human fleet approached. "They have numbers, but no experience. Our weapons platforms alone will tear them apart. All ships, prepare to engage. Let's make this quick." The first salvo of Krillian fire launched toward the human fleet, massive plasma bolts and kinetic missiles designed to overwhelm and destroy. The Krillians expected the humans to scatter, to break formation, to panic. Instead, the human fleet's adaptive shields flickered to life. The advanced shielding system Dr. ECO had developed analyzed each incoming projectile in microseconds. adjusting shield frequency and power distribution to maximize defense. Weapons that should have destroyed human ships splashed harmlessly against barriers that adapted faster than the Krillians could adjust their targeting. Shields holding at 97%, reported Tactical Officer Jimin Han from the Vengeance. Their weapons are exactly as predicted, initiating synchronized counterfire. What happened next shocked every Krillian in the system. The human fleet didn't just return fire, they attacked as a single coordinated entity. The combat network linked every ship's targeting system, creating an integrated battlefield awareness that allowed impossible precision. 10 human ships would focus fire on a single Krillian vessel, their shots timed to hit simultaneously from multiple angles, overwhelming shields that were designed to handle sequential impacts. Captain Soro Jang watched her tactical display with satisfaction as her ship, Vengeance, coordinated with 9 others to disable a Krillian heavy cruiser. Target their weapons and engines. Leave life support intact. I want prisoners, not corpses. The Krillian cruiser tried to maneuver, tried to return fire, but human targeting was too precise. Weapons batteries exploded under focused fire. Engines died as power systems were surgically destroyed, and within 2 minutes, the ship was drifting helplessly. Move to next target, Sora ordered. Maintain formation, keep the network synchronized. Across the battlefield, the pattern repeated. Human ships moved like dancers, each one knowing exactly where the others would be. Their fire coordinated to devastating effect. The Krillians had numerical advantage in this system, but it meant nothing against tactics they had never encountered. Commander Vixkrath watched in growing horror as his forces were systematically dismantled. How are they doing this? No species fights like this. Individual captains can't coordinate at this level. It's impossible. His tactical officer's voice shook as he replied, Sir, their network somehow they've linked all their ships into a single command system. Every vessel knows what every other vessel is doing. We've never seen anything like this. Then break the network, Vixkrath shouted. Jam their communications, disrupt their coordination. The Krillians tried. They flooded all frequencies with interference, used electromagnetic pulses, did everything their technology allowed. It made no difference. The human combat network used quantum-entangled communication systems that couldn't be jammed by conventional means. Dr. Seo had thought of everything. Captain Woo Jin Park commanded the battleship Retribution, leading a strike force directly at the defensive platforms. Target platform 7 weapons only. Avoid the crew sections. Remember, we're here for justice, not massacre fire. The platform's weapons arrays vanished under precisely targeted fire while the crew quarters remained untouched. The Krillian defenders found themselves disarmed but alive, a mercy they had not shown at New Seoul. Platform commander is signaling surrender, reported the communications officer. Accepted, Woo Jin replied. Transmit instructions for evacuation medical teams standing by to treat any injured. Move to next target. Admiral Dae-young watched the battle unfold from his flagship, feeling grim satisfaction. The plan was working perfectly. Human casualties were minimal, just minor shield damage and 1 frigate with damaged sensors. Krillian losses were mounting, but mostly in disabled ships rather than destroyed ones, exactly as intended. Admiral, we've located Commander Zixthrax, Intelligence Officer Minseo Kwan reported. He's on the command station in the center of the base. The station has heavy shields and weapons. He's broadcasting threats and demands for reinforcements. Then let's go get him, Dae-young said quietly. Captain Jang, Captain Park, converge on the command station. Disable it. I want Zixthrax alive to face justice. The 2 heavy ships, Vengeance and Retribution, along with 20 support vessels, focused their attention on the massive central station. Zixthrax had fortified it heavily, turning it into a fortress. His shields were powerful, his weapons numerous. But he was one station against 22 human ships working as one mind. Concentrate fire on Shield Generator Cluster 3, Sorajang commanded. Synchronize strike in 3, 2, 1, mark. 22 ships fired as one. The shield generators overloaded and exploded. With shields down on one side, the human ships poured precise fire into the weapons batteries, destroying them one by one while carefully avoiding the crew sections and life support. Inside the command station, Zixthrax watched his impregnable fortress fall apart around him. This can't be happening. We are Krillian. We are superior. These humans are supposed to be weak. His aide spoke urgently. Commander, we must evacuate. The humans will breach the station within minutes. No, Zixthrax shrieked. I will not flee from inferior beings. Send the distress signal to Dominion Command. Tell them to send the entire fleet. We will crush these humans and... The station shuddered as human breaching teams attached to the hull. Seconds later, they were cutting through. Zixthrax grabbed a weapon, determined to die fighting rather than surrender. But when the hull opened, what came through wasn't a horde of warriors. It was a single squad of human marines in powered armor, moving with calm professionalism. Their weapons were raised but not firing. Commander Zixthrax, the lead marine said through a translator, you are hereby placed under arrest for war crimes against sentient life, specifically the massacre of 1,043 human civilians, including 612 children. You will be given a fair trial with legal representation. Surrender now and you will not be harmed. Fair trial? Zixthrax laughed bitterly. You will execute me. No, the Marine replied. Humanity doesn't execute prisoners. We're better than that. We're better than you. Now drop the weapon. Zixthrax looked at his aide, at the human Marines, who could have simply filled the room with fire, but chose restraint, at the ruins of everything he thought was true. His weapon clattered to the floor. Within 6 hours, the Battle of Zarian Prime was over. 40 Krillian ships disabled or captured. 30 defensive platforms neutralized. Total Krillian casualties, 217 dead in the fighting, mostly from ships that refused to surrender. Total human casualties, 0 deaths, 14 wounded, all from minor accidents during the battle. Commander Zixthrax and 37 other officers directly involved in the New Seoul massacre were in human custody, being transported to the Vengeance for trial. Admiral Dae-Young broadcast the victory across all channels, knowing the Krillian Dominion would hear it. This is Fleet Admiral Dae-Young Choi. The battle at Zarian Prime is concluded, Commander. Zixthrax is in custody and will face trial. For his crimes, we call upon the Krillian Dominion to surrender all personnel involved in attacks on human civilians. Refuse, and we will come for them. This is your only warning. The Krillian Armada came like a tide of death, 3,000 warships supported by vessels from 6 allied species who feared Krillian power more than they valued justice. They divided into 3 massive battle groups, each targeting a different human system: Humanity's Edge, New Bizan, and the Terra Nova Cluster. Admiral Dae-Young Choi stood in the Tactical Command Center on Earth, surrounded by holographic displays showing all 3 battlefronts. His fleet had grown to 800 ships now, but even with superior technology, they were still outnumbered nearly 4 to 1. The Krillians are betting everything on this push, Intelligence Officer Min Seo Kwan explained, highlighting enemy movements. They're bringing their entire military reserve. If we can break this assault, they'll have nothing left to threaten us with. And if we fail, they'll sweep through human space unopposed, Dae-Young replied grimly. 3 battles, all happening simultaneously. We need to win all of them. He divided his forces carefully. 250 ships to each major battle, with 50 held in reserve for rapid response. Each fleet would be outnumbered, but each would have the technological edge that had won at Zarian Prime. At humanity's edge, Captain Sora Jang commanded the defensive fleet from her ship Vengeance. The system was home to 500,000 colonists, mostly farmers and miners who had built their lives on 3 small planets. When the Krillian battle group of 1,000 ships appeared at the system's edge, panic spread through the civilian population. "All civilians to evacuation points," Sora ordered. "We'll hold them here, I promise you. They will not reach your homes." Her second officer, Lieutenant Chen Wei, looked at the tactical display with worry. "Captain, we're outnumbered 4 to 1 even with our advantages." Those odds mean nothing," Sora interrupted. "They still think in terms of individual ship combat. We think as one fleet besides. We're not just defending empty space, we're protecting families. Children, homes. We have something worth fighting for." The Krillian commander, High General Thrixhaven, studied the human defensive formation with contempt. "Only 250 ships? The humans are even more foolish than I thought. All vessels. Advance. Destroy them quickly." The Krillian fleet charged forward in a massive wave, exactly as Sora had predicted. Their tactics hadn't changed. Overwhelming numbers, brute force, no subtlety. "Execute defense pattern Omega," Sora commanded. "Let them come to us." The human fleet formed a layered defensive sphere around the inhabited planets. As the Krillians approached, human ships began a carefully choreographed dance. Some ships advanced to draw fire while others fell back, rotating constantly so no vessel's shields were ever overwhelmed. The combat network calculated optimal positioning every microsecond, keeping the fleet in constant fluid motion. Krillian fire poured toward the humans in massive volleys. But the adaptive shields held, flickering and adjusting, spreading damage across the entire fleet rather than allowing any single ship to be destroyed. Meanwhile, human return fire was devastatingly precise. Each shot targeted weapons, engines, command centers. "They're trying to disable us rather than destroy us," Thrixhaven realized with shock. "They could be killing thousands, but they're taking the harder path. Why?" His tactical officer had no answer. The human approach made no sense to Krillian military doctrine and war. You killed your enemies as efficiently as possible. Yet the humans were fighting with one hand tied behind their backs, deliberately choosing the more difficult path of precision over destruction. At New Bizayan, Captain Woojin Park faced a similar situation, 1,000 Krillian ships attacking his 250. But New Bizan had something humanity's edge didn't, a massive asteroid belt that could be used for tactical advantage. "Take us into the belt," Woojin ordered. "Use the asteroids for cover, make them come to us on our terms." The human fleet vanished into the dense asteroid field. The Krillians followed, confident in their numbers. What they found was a nightmare human ships appearing from behind asteroids, firing with impossible precision, then disappearing again. The combat network allowed every human captain to know exactly where every other ship was, even when visual contact was impossible. Krillian ships, trying to maintain their formation, collided with asteroids. Others were ambushed from multiple directions simultaneously. Thrixhaven's counterpart at New Bizan, Admiral Crixel, watched his forces take heavy damage while barely scratching the humans. "They're using terrain like ground troops," Crixel shouted in frustration. "Naval combat doesn't work this way. You can't use asteroids for cover in space battles." "Apparently you can," his aide replied weakly, as another 10 Krillian ships were disabled by coordinated human fire. The battle at Terra Nova was different. This system had minimal defensive terrain, but it had something else. Captain the Jin Choi and the evacuation fleet. The Jin commanded the destroyer Guardian, part of a small force of 50 ships tasked with protecting civilian transports. The main defensive fleet of 200 ships, commanded by Admiral Han Soo-jin, engaged the 1,000-ship Krillian force head-on. But a splinter group of 200 Krillian vessels broke away, heading straight for the evacuation transports. "They're targeting civilians," the Jin's tactical officer reported, horror in his voice. The Jin's face went cold. "Not while I'm breathing all ships. Intercept course. Put us between them and those transports now." 50 human warships against 200 Krillian vessels, impossible odds. But the Jin didn't hesitate. Her ships formed a defensive wall between the Krillians and the helpless civilian transports, pouring every bit of fire they could generate at the attackers. "Captain, our shields are failing," her engineer called out. "We can't hold them much longer." "We don't need to hold them," the Jin replied. "We just need to slow them down. Buy time for the transports to escape, reroute all power to forward. Shields weapons to maximum. Let's make every shot count." The Guardian and her sister ships fought like cornered tigers. They couldn't win, couldn't survive, but they could delay. Each Krillian ship they disabled was one less threat to the civilians. Each second they held was another second for the transports to reach safety. Aboard the civilian transport Hope, families huddled together watching the battle on external monitors. They could see the Guardian and the other warships taking hit after hit. Shields failing, armor breaching, but still fighting. "Why don't they retreat?" a child asked her mother. The mother, tears streaming down her face, held her daughter close. "Because they're heroes, sweetheart. They're buying us time to escape. They're saving us." Admiral Han Soo-jin, engaged with the main Krillian force, saw what was happening. Disengage from current targets, all ships. Emergency speed to intercept that splinter force. Captain Choi needs support now. But even at maximum speed, they were minutes away. Minutes the Jin didn't have. The Guardian's bridge shook as another hit penetrated their failing shields. Consoles exploded. Crew members fell wounded. The Jin stayed at her station, blood running from a cut on her forehead. "Transports are clear," communications reported. "All civilian ships have escaped to faster than light." "Good," the Jin smiled. "Then we did our job, all ships. Keep fighting. Make them remember. Make them remember that humanity protects its own." The Guardian died fighting, taking 3 Krillian ships with her in a final desperate ramming attack. Of the 50 ships in the evacuation guard, only 12 survived. But every single civilian transport escaped safely. When Admiral Han reached the site 15 minutes later, she found the wreckage and the surviving ships. She also found the Krillian splinter force in full retreat, shaken by the ferocity of defenders who fought to the death for others. Captain the Jin Choi died saving 8,000 civilians. Han reported to Dae-young later, her voice thick with emotion. Her crew and 49 other ships gave everything. Every life on those transports owes their survival to people who chose duty over survival. Dae-young closed his eyes, adding more names to the list of honored dead. The war was taking its toll, thousands of military casualties now. Though civilian losses remain minimal thanks to sacrifices like the Jin's. But the battles were being won. At humanity's edge, Captain Sora's defensive strategy worked perfectly. The Krillian force was ground down over 18 hours of fighting until finally the survivors retreated. At New Bizen, Woojin's asteroid ambush tactics shattered the attackers' morale. At Terra Nova, despite the losses, the system held. More importantly, something else was happening. The Krillian allied species, who had joined out of fear rather than conviction, were quietly withdrawing their support. The Valorian Republic was the first ambassador. Sung Jin-yoon sent a secret message to human forces. "We were wrong," the message said. "The Valorian government officially withdraws support from the Krillian Dominion. We will provide you with intelligence on Krillian fleet. Movements and weaknesses, it is the least we can do, to atone for our cowardice." Other species followed. Within a week of the 3 great battles, the Krillian Dominion found itself isolated. Their 3,000-ship armada was reduced to less than 1,000 operational vessels. Their allied support had vanished. Their economy was straining under the military expenditure, and humanity was just getting started. Dr. Haiyan Wu Sio's research teams had developed new systems during the war, better shields, more efficient weapons improved. The conference room aboard the Eternal Justice was silent as Admiral Dae-Yong Choi, President Ji Woo-nam, and Director Eun-ji Wang reviewed the Krillian surrender offer. Outside the viewports, the human fleet floated in formation 800 ships strong, victorious but scarred by battle. "They're offering complete surrender," Eun-ji said, reading through the terms. "Military disarmament, delivery of all war criminals, reparations. They're giving us everything we demanded." "Because they have no choice," Dae-Yong replied. "Our fleet is 2 days from their homeworld. They know we could destroy their military completely if we wanted to." President Nam sat quietly, remembering the footage from New Seoul, the small bodies in the rubble, the grieving parents. She thought of Captain Jin Choi and the thousands of other military personnel who had died defending human civilians. She thought of the choice before her: accept the surrender or continue to total victory. "What we decide here will define humanity's place in the galaxy for generations," she said finally. "We could destroy the Krillian Dominion, completely reduce their fleet to scrap, occupy their worlds, make them pay for every drop of blood and part of me. The part that saw those murdered children wants exactly that." She paused, looking at both officers. "But we're not fighting to become conquerors. We're fighting for justice. If we become monsters to defeat monsters, what have we really won?" Dae-Yong nodded slowly. "So we accept the surrender?" "We accept it," Nam confirmed. "But on our terms, and with guarantees that nothing like New Seoul can ever happen again. Draft a peace treaty. I want it to change everything." The Treaty of Harmony's Edge, named for the colony where it all began, was unlike any peace agreement the galaxy had ever seen. Ambassador Ji-sun Choi presented it to the Krillian civilian government with calm authority. "Article 1, she read. "All Krillian military forces will be reduced to defensive levels, only no offensive weapons platforms, no fleet carriers. No vessels larger than frigate-class compliance will be verified by human inspectors with permanent stations throughout Krillian space." The Krillian civilian leader, Prime Minister Vexthus, signed without protest. His people had tasted war with humanity and had no desire for more. Article 2, all individuals responsible for attacks on human civilians, including Commander Zixthrax and 37 co-conspirators, will be remanded to human custody for trial. Additional war criminals will be identified through joint investigation and surrendered immediately. Again, Vexthus signed. The military leadership that had brought this disaster had already been arrested by the civilian government. Article 3, reparations will be paid to victims' families over 50 standard years monetary compensation, educational opportunities for orphan children, medical care for injured survivors, the total amount to be determined by independent arbitration. Vexthus hesitated on this one. "The amount could bankrupt our economy." "Then you should have thought of that before murdering our children," Ji-sun replied coldly. "Sign it or the fleet outside will finish what your military started." Vexthus signed. The war crimes trials began 3 months later. Commander Zixthrax and his co-conspirators were tried before Judge Advocate General Hai Jin-moon in proceedings broadcast across all of known space. Every species watched as humanity demonstrated what justice actually meant. Zixthrax was given legal representation, the best defense attorney humanity could provide. Every piece of evidence was examined, every testimony verified. The defendants were allowed to speak in their own defense, to present any mitigating circumstances. None existed. The evidence was overwhelming. The attack on New Seoul had been deliberate, unprovoked, targeting civilians intentionally. The footage showed Krillian vessels firing on the school first, before any other target. Communications logs proved it was ordered specifically to demonstrate the minion's superiority through terror. How do you find the defendant? Judge Moon asked the tribunal. Guilty of all charges, came the unanimous reply. Crimes against sentient life, murder of civilians, war crimes on all counts, guilty. Zixthrax stood defiant. You should execute me like I would execute you. At least be honest about your revenge. Judge Moon looked at him with something that might have been pity. We're not executing you, Commander. We're better than that. You're sentenced to life imprisonment. You'll live. You'll receive medical care. You'll be treated humanely. Everything you denied to those children at New Seoul. You'll spend the rest of your life knowing that the species you called weak showed you more mercy than you deserve. Zixthrax was led away to a human prison facility where he would indeed spend his remaining decades alive, healthy and forever haunted by the memory of his crimes. The galaxy watched these proceedings with a mixture of awe and fear. Humanity had demonstrated both overwhelming military power and rigid adherence to legal principles. They were dangerous, yes, but they were also just. The Galactic Council, which had been useless during the crisis, found itself facing a very different humanity when Ambassador Te Yang Xin returned to present new proposals. The current council structure is clearly inadequate, Te Yang stated bluntly. When children were massacred, you offered sympathy and did nothing. The changes now humanity proposes. The creation of a security enforcement board with power to respond to crimes against sentient life. Many species protested. You want military intervention power? You want to police the galaxy? No, Taeyang corrected. We want collective security. Any species that commits atrocities, like the one it knew, Seoul faces response from the entire galactic community. Not just the victims were proposing the new Seoul Protocol's attacks on civilians, especially children, become universal crimes that trigger mandatory council action. The proposal sparked fierce debate. Some species feared human dominance. Others, having watched the war, feared humanity's wrath more. The Valorian Republic, through Ambassador Sung Jin Yoon, spoke in support. We were cowards when humanity needed support, Sung Jin admitted publicly. We told them to accept the massacre and move on. We were wrong. The humans showed us what courage and justice look like. I support their proposal completely. After months of negotiation, the new Seoul Protocols were adopted. Humanity took a permanent seat on a newly created security board. The galaxy had a new order, one where might was balanced by law and where atrocities brought collective response. 5 years later, the new Seoul colony had been completely rebuilt. The memorial stood at the colony's center, a wall of polished stone with 1,000 names carved deep. Survivor Soo-min Lee, walking with a cane from her injuries, stood before it every morning, reading the names. The dedication ceremony brought dignitaries from across human space and beyond. President Nam, older now but still strong, spoke to the assembled crowd. 5 years ago, the people whose names are carved here were murdered in an act of cowardice, she said. Their death sparked the war that changed the galaxy. We fought not for conquest but for justice. We won not through cruelty but through courage and principle. Today we honor their memory by promising that what happened here will never happen again, not to humanity, not to any species. The new Seoul Protocols guarantee it. The crowd was quiet as families of the victims laid flowers at the memorial. Then the children came, students from the rebuilt school, carrying candles. Among them were the 2 survivors Soo-min had shielded with her own body, now 10 years old and healthy. They placed their candles in a circle around the memorial and sang a simple song about hope and memory and peace. In orbit above, Captain Sora Jang commanded a patrol fleet that kept watch over the system. The Vengeance and her sister ships were now guardians rather than warriors, protecting the rebuilt colony and serving as a reminder to all who passed by. Captain, "We have multiple ships approaching," her tactical officer reported. The Lorian merchant convoy requesting permission to dock. They want to trade. Sora smiled. "Permission granted. Send them docking coordinates. Let's show them what New Sol looks like now." The war had ended 5 years ago, but its effects continued. The Corellian Dominion, under civilian leadership and human oversight, had transformed into a peaceful society. Former soldiers found new purpose in rebuilding. Young Corellians learned in schools about the war and about the terrible cost of aggression. Prime Minister Vex thus made an annual pilgrimage to New Sol to lay flowers at the memorial. The first year he came, survivors spat at him. Now they nodded in acknowledgement. Forgiveness would take generations if it ever came, but at least there was peace. Admiral Dae-Jung Choi, retired again, served as the first director of Galactic Peace Enforcement. His headquarters was on Earth, but he traveled constantly, visiting member species, observing military buildups, ensuring the New Sol protocols were followed. He was 78 now, white-haired and tired, but dedicated to preventing another tragedy. "Will there ever be another war?" a young officer asked him during an inspection tour. Dae-Jung looked out at the stars, remembering the faces of those who died, remembering the children of New Sol. "Probably," he said honestly. "Sentient beings are complicated. We make mistakes. We grow angry. We fear each other. But what we've built here, these protocols, this system, it makes war harder to start and easier to stop. That's the best we can do in years after the war." A new generation was growing up across human space children who knew the story.